What a night. What a night. Crossing a sea, planting seeds, some improv theater even, Union Temple and CBE beginning our prayer life together. Rabbi Kolin and I decided to do something unusual just for tonight. We decided that for this special night, we would weave a Devar Torah together with both of our voices to symbolize our two communities coming together as one. I'll start. There's a particular midrash about this week's parasha which has delighted me since the first time I read it. It goes like this. The daughters of Israel passed through the sea, holding their children in their arms. And when these, their children, cried, they would stretch out their hands and pluck an apple or a pomegranate from the orchard growing within the sea and give it to their children. So here our people are in a hurried escape from slavery to freedom in the midst of the greatest miracle of all time, walking through a sea on dry land. And if that wasn't enough, there is food, sweet, ripe, delicious fruit for our children to eat along the way. And also there were trees growing on the seafloor. In the rabbinic imagination, trees accompany us wherever we go. Trees nourish us. Trees stand by us in our time of need. They comfort us as we live our days. You may know that Holocaust Remembrance Day was this last Wednesday, and Rabbi Rick Jacobs shared a picture of a 170-year-old white horse chestnut tree that stood outside the Anne Frank house, a tree that provided inspiration and comfort to Anne Frank when she was confined there. And Rabbi Jacobs related that in 2005, it was discovered that the tree had a serious disease, and the Anne Frank house decided to gather its chestnuts and to germinate them and to donate hundreds of saplings to schools named after Anne Frank and to many other organizations all around the world. Before the tree collapsed and died, 150 of those descendants were donated to the Amsterdam's Bos Woodland Park. And in 2013, after 3 years in quarantine, the last of the young trees from the Anne Frank House seedling project were planted in the United States. So we might imagine children all around the world growing up in conditions, please God, totally different from Anne Frank's, but who will look out their window and find themselves accompanied, comforted, inspired maybe, by a sapling from her tree. I have a tree outside of my window. Maybe you do too. And I watch that tree for many hours. I watch it change as the seasons change. I watch the weather and the wind move through it. I watch it stand solid, planted, strong. My tree accompanies me throughout my days of quarantine, sometimes days of isolation. It makes me less alone, a steady presence, a friend.
And there are times when these trees that sustain and accompany us with their quiet grandeur and their sweet fruits, when those trees become thirsty, when the land that feeds them is cracking and parched. We tell stories about these trees too, maybe because we see ourselves in them. There's an often told story on Tu B'Shvat about a time when the trees and growing things and people were experiencing a terrible drought. They called upon Honi HaMa'agal, Honi the circle maker, to come and to pray to God for rain. So Honi came, and true to his name, he took a stick and he drew a circle on the ground. He then stepped inside of that circle and he cried out to God for rain, for the people and for the land. And God responded with a light drizzle. And Honi said, God, that is not what I asked for. So God responded with a violent torrential downpour. And Honi said, God, that is not what I asked for. I asked for rains of blessing, rains of generosity and of hope and of nourishment. So rains of blessing finally came down, each drop holding inside of it a taste of sweetness and possibility, a scent of fullness and of joy. And the land healed and it prospered, and the trees grew and produced for their generation and for many generations yet to come. It's a wonderful and quirky kind of story, but maybe it's fitting for us tonight, on this night, as our two communities make our way towards each other. We are also thirsty, like the trees, like the land. Just because we're human beings who are navigating the challenges of life, we are thirsty. And now during this pandemic, we are parched. We are thirsty for community, for finding meaning in the hardest and in the highest moments in our lives. Thirsty for contact and kindness. Ready to drink up joy and connection. In this political moment, we're thirsty for making a real difference and healing suffering in our world, and for Torah that inspires us and fires us up. And like Honi, we're not looking for a light drizzle or a torrential downpour. We need the rains of blessing. It feels so much like our coming together will produce these rains of blessing. Rains which can saturate the earth beneath our feet and grow even bigger, the beautiful things that have already been planted by CBE and Union Temple, and rains that will water all of the new seeds of possibility that lie just beneath the surface. The ways we imagine learning together and laughing together, crying together when our hearts break, and dancing together when this pandemic breaks. Changing the world together, walking this world together. When we are parched, choosing abundance is not easy. Choosing to grow, literally and figuratively, is no small thing. Growing our family trees is no small thing. But here we are, on this Tu B'Shvat, a holiday that celebrates the first buds forming on the branches, beginning to call forth the rains of blessing. Like Honi, we step into a circle too, virtually for now. But unlike Honi, whose circle was just big enough for himself, for his own body, our circle is enormous. We can already begin to see it in all of the ways that folks from each of our communities are making sure that this circle is expansive enough to include everyone, that everyone can fit in it, in this circle. We're just at the beginning now, figuring out how this circle works, how it will work, where we might each stand in it, who else is here. But already the rains of blessing are falling, and already the drops of possibility are hitting the ground, and already it seems all that grows is preparing to drink it all up.
Every now and then, I come across a book that expands my mind so dramatically, I never see the world the same way again. A few years ago, a friend recommended that I read The Hidden Life of Trees by forester Peter Wohlleben. There's more in it than I can possibly summarize here, but what foresters and biologists have learned is that trees are relational. Did you know that? They actually relate to each other. They do so most readily with other trees of their own species, but they also communicate across species. In fact, trees do best in community with other trees, in proximity to other trees. They communicate through their root systems and the fungal networks in the soil that connect their root systems. They warn each other of animals or insects that would eat their leaves, and they defend each other. When a tree is ailing, the other trees will use their root systems to send that tree nutrients to heal and grow stronger, seeming to recognize that their own well-being depends upon the collective. They will share what they have for the health and the strength of each other. Trees, in fact, are most likely to thrive when they are together. Now, we have lived almost a year now apart from each other. And if we didn't know it before, we know now more than ever how much we need each other, how much we need community. community like this, and someday community in person. One thing we're working toward is a comprehensive chesed program by which all of the members of our community are able and facilitated to be able to show up for each other when we're in need, with meals, with presence at Shiva Minyanim, with thoughtful care packages, with practical support, with phone calls and visits when we're lonely or struggling. So that we are accompanied through all of our days, through all of the seasons, no matter what the weather's like. So that we are creating right here the world that should exist, where everyone has what they need, a microcosm of the world that should be, where everyone feels cared for, where every one of us is stronger by being together. And together we're building toward a vision where our children too grow strong in community, where they know and feel from their earliest years that they are loved. And their eyes light up with inspiration as they encounter learning that expands them and transforms them, and where they make friends for life in community. And as teens, they grow to relish their time together so much that this is the place where they feel most themselves and most free. And adults of all ages dig into the wisdom and the creativity and the humor and the life that is our inheritance, surprising ourselves with what sweet fruit we find in our tradition and culture to savor. And we find new ways to listen to the quiet voice within, or to join each other in song and celebration, remembering the great oneness that connects us all like a great root system. And we find week after week that there is so much to celebrate among us. And through all of our acts of caring and all of our child rearing and all of our learning and all of our celebrating, we come to know each other. And from the strength of those relationships, we build power. Power to turn outward to our borough and our city and our state and our nation, to our neighbors across all of our differences, and we will be a force for good. Tonight we plant our seeds. We've pledged to accompany one another as a tree outside a lonely window, or as an orchard lining the path to freedom. Tonight our roots begin to reach toward each other. Soon we will stand in one another's company, like a grove of trees growing upward and outward together, stronger because of one another, with wider branches, with sweeter fruit, thriving together. Shabbat Shalom.